In the humid shadows of Key West, Florida, where Victorian mansions whisper secrets of bygone eras, and salt air carries more than just ocean spray, there exists one of America's most notorious paranormal artifacts, Robert the Doll. Standing tall in his weathered sailor suit, Robert the Doll has terrorized residents, visitors, and skeptics alike for over a century. This is no mere tale of a child's plaything, but a chronicle of supernatural malevolence that has transcended generations, inspiring horror films,
I said talk to me, damn it!
Gathering international attention, and collecting thousands of apology letters from those who dared to cross his path, begging for mercy. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wicked Encounters, where we explore just what goes bump in the night. I'm your host, Allie, and today we're taking a look at a special Florida occupant that is said by some to be one of the most haunted objects in the world, Robert the Doll. The story of Robert the Doll begins in the early 1900s, shrouded in conflicting accounts that only add to his mystique. The most widely accepted origin traces back to 1904, when Robert Eugene Otto, a boy who would later be known simply as Gene, received the doll as a gift. Standing at an unusual height of 40 inches and stuffed with wood-wool excelsior, fine, long wood shavings that come from softwoods like spruce or pine, Robert was crafted by the prestigious Steiff Company of Germany, the same manufacturer famous for creating the first teddy bear. According to museum records, Gene's grandfather purchased the doll during a business trip to Germany and presented it to his grandson as a birthday gift. However, this comfortable explanation for Robert's origins competes with a far more sinister alternative. Local legend says that Robert was created and cursed by a bohemian servant who worked in the Otto household. This woman, described in various accounts as either showing affection for young Gene or seeking revenge against the family for mistreatment, allegedly infused the doll with voodoo magic that went terribly awry. Local legends aside, though, a Steiff Company historian later revealed that Robert was likely never intended as a toy at all, but rather as part of a window display featuring clowns or jesters. Yeah, fun fact. The sailor outfit Robert wears, that was Gene's when he was a child, which, to me, adds a couple unsettling details to Robert's story. He was meant to be watched, not loved, yet somehow found his way into the intimate confines of a child's bedroom, where the boundary between the observer and the observed was becoming chillingly blurred. Robert Eugene Otto was born into prominence in Key West in the 1900s, part of a wealthy family whose mansion at 534 Eaton Street, now known as the Artist House, would become the epicenter of supernatural activity. The moment Robert the Doll entered the household, the dynamic between boy and doll defied normal childhood relationships. They became best friends. With Robert Gene so enamored with his new companion, he gave the doll his own first name, and began referring to himself simply as Gene, a symbolic surrender of identity that would later prove prophetic. The Otto family soon began witnessing phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality. Parents would hear Gene conversing with Robert in his upstairs bedroom, initially dismissing it as typical childhood play, until they realized they were hearing two distinctly different voices. Gene's high childish tones, and another voice, deeper, more unsettling. When questioned, Gene would insist that Robert was speaking to him. The supernatural incidents escalated dramatically. Gene's parents would be awakened by their son's terrified screams and the sound of furniture crashing in his bedroom. Racing upstairs, they would find Gene cowering in terror, his room in complete disarray with toys scattered and furniture overturned. And in the center of that chaos sat Robert, positioned perfectly at the foot of the bed as if presiding over the destruction. When asked what happened, Gene would only offer the explanation that would become his constant refrain: Robert did it. As the years progressed, Robert's influence seemed to grow stronger and more malicious. Servants in the Otto household reported being locked in rooms while cleaning, finding silverware thrown about the dining room and kitchen, and discovering Gene's other toys mysteriously mutilated. The doll's presence became so oppressive, the household staff would quit in rapid succession, unable to tolerate the atmosphere of dread that Robert seemed to generate. Neighborhood children added their own terrifying testimonies to Robert's growing legend. They claimed to see the doll watching them from the upstairs turret window of the Otto mansion, his expression changing as he tracked their movements. Some children reported that Robert would mock them as they walked to school. The doll's supernatural abilities appeared to extend beyond mere mischief. Family members and visitors reported seeing Robert move independently, change facial expressions in response to conversations held in front of him, and emit disturbing giggling sounds when no one was directly watching him. These unexplainable events created an atmosphere of constant unease in the Otto home, where residents and guests alike felt perpetually observed by malevolent intelligence. Despite, or perhaps because of the terror Robert inspired in his childhood, Gene Otto maintained his relationship with the doll throughout his adult life. Gene grew up to become a prominent artist in Key West, eventually studying art in New York and Paris, before marrying Annette Parker in 1930. The couple returned to the Otto family home, bringing Gene's lifelong companion back to his childhood domain. Gene's devotion to Robert struck most observers as deeply unhealthy, especially to his wife Annette. He spoke about the doll in the first person, as if Robert were a living entity rather than an inanimate object. The artist insisted on Robert having his own chair at the dinner table and would position the doll to watch him while he bathed. Awkward. Gene would tuck Robert into bed with him each night, maintaining the intimate connection that had defined their relationship since childhood. And that's probably why, Gene didn't have any kids. Just saying. The doll was given his own room on the house's turret, where Gene would spend hours painting and conversing with Robert. From this elevated position, the doll could observe the street below, and local school children continued to report seeing the doll appear and disappear at the window, sometimes mocking them as they passed. This behavior became so notorious that children would actively avoid the street where the Otto mansion stood. Gene's wife, Annette, called Anne by family, found Robert's presence deeply disturbing, and fought a losing battle to limit the doll's influence in their home. Anne felt genuinely uneasy around Robert, and repeatedly requested that Gene banish the doll to the attic, away from their daily lives. While Gene occasionally acquiesced to his wife's demands, Robert would invariably be found back in his preferred turret room, as if he had moved there of his own volition. The supernatural activity continued unabated throughout Gene's adult years. Visitors to the house reported hearing footsteps pacing in the attic when Robert was supposedly locked away, accompanied by the same disturbing giggling that had plagued Gene's childhood. Guests claimed that Robert's facial expressions would visibly change when anyone spoke negatively about Gene, suggesting a protective or possessive relationship between the doll and his owner. When Malcolm Ross, a journalist from the local Solaris Hills newspaper, visited Robert in the turret room, he described the experience as profoundly unsettling, noting that the doll seemed to possess an awareness that defied explanation. When he first entered the room with the doll, he said that it was like a metal bar running down my back. At first, when we walked through the door, the look on his face was like a little boy being punished. It was as if he was asking himself, "Who are these people in my room, and what are they going to do to me?" Ross added an explanation for the doll as he looked at him, that there was some kind of intelligence there, that the doll was listening to us. The journalist's account added legitimacy to the growing collection of supernatural testimonies surrounding Robert's activity. Gene Otto died in 1974 at the age of 73, ending a relationship with Robert that had spanned nearly 7 decades. Anne Otto passed away just 2 years later, and the Eaton Street mansion was sold to Myrtle Reuter, who unknowingly inherited one of the most haunted objects in American folklore. For 20 years, Reuter served as Robert's reluctant caretaker, experiencing firsthand the supernatural phenomena that had plagued the Otto family for generations. Reuter corroborated many of the supernatural claims made by the Otto family. She frequently found Robert in different locations from where she had left him, and reported that visitors to the house were made uncomfortable by the doll's presence. The new owner claimed that Robert would appear and disappear at will throughout the house, and that his facial expression would change when anyone discussed Gene Otto in negative terms. These ongoing manifestations suggest that Gene's death had not severed the supernatural connection between the artist and his beloved doll. The supernatural activity during Reuter's ownership included the familiar sounds of footsteps in empty rooms, inexplicable giggling, and the persistent sense that the doll was observing household activities. Visitors to the house continued to report feeling watched and experiencing an overwhelming sense of unease in Robert's presence. Some guests claimed to witness the doll moving independently or changing position when not directly observed. In 1994, after 2 decades of supernatural harassment, Myrtle Reuter donated Robert to the East Martello Museum in Key West, perhaps hoping to rid herself of the doll's disturbing presence. Rather than ending Robert's reign of terror, the museum relocation marked the beginning of his transformation into an international phenomenon. Housed initially in a storage room covered by a sheet, Robert's true notoriety began when ghost tour operator David L. Sloan arranged to photograph the doll for his paranormal research. Sloan described a profound moment when he first encountered Robert face to face, claiming that he witnessed the doll come alive during their initial meeting. This experience convinced Sloan that Robert contained the spirit of a child, and he became one of the doll's most dedicated researchers and advocates. Under Sloan's influence, Robert was eventually moved from storage to a permanent display case where thousands of visitors could encounter his unsettling presence. The museum setting intensified rather than contained Robert's supernatural activities. Staff and visitors regularly reported witnessing the doll move within his glass case, change facial expressions, and affect electronic equipment. The most commonly reported phenomenon involved cameras and cell phones malfunctioning when visitors attempted to photograph Robert without first asking his permission. These devices would mysteriously resume normal function once the visitor left the museum, suggesting a targeted supernatural interference. Robert's reputation as a cursed object has generated thousands of documented incidents and testimonies from visitors who claim to have experienced supernatural retribution for disrespecting the doll. The museum receives apology letters on a daily basis from individuals who believe they have been cursed by Robert after taking his photograph without permission or mocking him during their visit. The alleged curses manifest in various forms, ranging from minor inconveniences to life-altering tragedies. Victims report experiencing car accidents, mechanical failures, relationship breakdowns, financial ruin, serious illnesses, and even deaths in their families following their encounter with Robert. One particularly detailed apology letter from Dan Schulz describes a cascade of misfortunes including near-fatal anemia, multiple family deaths, and bankruptcy that he attributes to mocking Robert during a 2009 museum visit. The museum's collection of apology letters represents a unique form of supernatural documentation. These letters come from around the world, written in multiple languages by visitors who have returned home, only to experience what they believe to be Robert's revenge. The letters reveal a consistent pattern. Visitors who initially approached Robert with skepticism or disrespect later find themselves pleading for forgiveness as unexplained misfortunes plague their lives. International incidents include letters from Japan, where visitors report illness and accidents following unauthorized photographs of Robert. The global reach of these supernatural claims suggest that Robert's influence extends far beyond the physical boundaries of Key West, affecting people who have encountered him either in person or through photographs and videos shared online. Robert's story has achieved unprecedented visibility through modern media, with numerous television shows, documentaries, and online content creators featuring the doll in paranormal investigations. The museum reports that viral videos and social media exposure led to significant increases in apology letters, as viewers who merely see Robert's image online claim to experience supernatural harassment. This suggests that Robert's influence has evolved to encompass digital encounters, expanding his reach to a global audience through internet connectivity. Despite persistent rumors, Robert was not in fact the direct inspiration for the horror film franchise Child's Play and its iconic character Chucky. Creator Don Mancini has stated that his inspiration came from My Buddy Dolls, Cabbage Patch Kids, and the Twilight Zone episode Living Doll, not from Robert's legend. However, the similarities between the fictional Chucky and the real Robert have contributed to both characters' enduring popularity in horror culture. For videos that have been directly inspired by Robert, there is Robert, a 2015 horror film, The Curse of Robert the Doll, The Toy Maker, The Revenge of Robert the Doll, and Robert Reborn.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
Skeptics attribute Robert's supernatural reputation to psychological factors, including suggestion, confirmation bias, and the power of folklore to influence perception and memory. They argue that the museum's commercial interest in maintaining Robert's haunted reputation, combined with visitors' expectations based on the doll's notorious history, creates conditions where normal coincidences are interpreted as supernatural phenomena. But the sheer volume of reported incidents, the consistency of their testimonies across different time periods and cultural backgrounds, and the specific nature of the supernatural claims have challenged even dedicated skeptics. The thousands of apology letters, the consistent testimonies of supernatural experiences, and the ongoing reports of curses and misfortunes create a body of evidence that challenges conventional understanding of how folklore operates in the modern world. Robert's story continues to evolve with each new visitor, each viral video, and each desperate apology letter sent to a museum in Key West. In a world increasingly skeptical of the supernatural, Robert the Doll stands as a persistent reminder that some stories are too strange, too consistent, and too terrifying to dismiss entirely. What do you think of Robert the Doll? Have you ever seen him before? Who do you think would win in a haunt-off, Robert the Doll or Annabelle? Should I make a video comparing the two haunted objects? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all and love hearing about the terrifying tales you all have to share. If you like this video and want to see more spooky topics that I have or have yet to cover, consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the little bell icon to know exactly when the next video comes out. I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon, Nakala, Beefalump, Nikolai, and Courtney J. You guys are just too amazing, and I'm so thankful to have your support. Well, that's all I have time for today. So with that, I'm Allie, this is Wicked Encounters, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy your spooky season.